Welcome back to another UNC football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me as she almost always does when we talk about UNC football recruiting, our very own Miss Deana King. And Deana, we're going to kind of take everybody through spring football in this edition. It's kind of strange that there actually is spring football in high school. Virginia and North Carolina in particular playing their seasons right now. They've already had a few games into the season. They're already a couple games into the season. The seasons are abbreviated, so it's not a typical fall season. State championships will be sometime, I guess, in mid-May. But what the focus is on this podcast are the 5 signed future Tar Heels, kids that will enroll this summer, and they'll be a part of the program as soon as they step on campus this summer. And then there are 4 committed Tar Heels for the class of 2022 who are also playing. Next week, we're going to do a podcast where we look at the top targets coming up, primarily in the class of 22, but also 23, since the staff is hitting 23 hard now because 22 is going to be a small class. So let's go ahead and get right into it with the 2021 signees. There are 5 of them whose teams are currently playing spring seasons. And you had some news that you broke on our message board the other day about Kamarro Edmonds. Kind of catch everybody up to date with Kamarro, his team, how they're doing, and what was that news that you posted on our board the other day?
Kamarro plays at Havelock, and Havelock is off to a really great start, 3-0. They have just blistered everybody in their way, possibly on their way to a state championship run. Kamarro, he has played well when he has played. A lot of the games have been so big. They have a big margin. He only played half a game. But last week he got injured. He told me he got injured. A kid rolled on his ankle, but everything was. He didn't have no breaks. He was supposed to go to the doctor, and possibly, with sometimes ankle sprains are worse than breaks. You got to just, take care of it. And I think he's kind of going to wait a couple weeks, under the doctor's care and make a big run for that state championship run for the Rams.
Yeah, when you have a break, you have a more definitive timeline. A sprained ankle, we've seen covering football and basketball for years, that could take 2 weeks. It could take 10 weeks. Just depends on how severe it is and if something tweaks it during the course of the process. Tymir Brown, you and I were talking a little bit earlier today before we did this podcast. You got some interesting stuff on him. How is he doing, and what position is he playing right now?
Tymir Brown's the best athlete at Jacksonville. So last year he played quarterback. He ran the ball. This year he's playing some wide receiver. He's already had a 100-yard plus game, and so the Cardinals are off to a 3-0 start. They're in Havelock's conference. They got a big showdown with Havelock at the end of the regular season. It's a game that if Kamarro Edmonds is back healthy, a lot of Carolina fans will want to pay attention to that game. So, Tymir is just showing his versatility as an athlete, just playing wherever the Cardinal coaching staff needs him to play.
I bet Mac and the staff love that because, sometimes at Rivals, kids play different positions. They just put athlete up there. They need to have a new distinction for guys like for Tymer Brown. Just put FB, football, or FBP, football player.
I agree. I mean, he's a coach's dream, if coach wants him to play running back, he play running back. He wants to play quarterback, he put him at quarterback. I think he probably makes their team a little bit better. Evidently, they've got a quarterback that can throw the ball, so he's put him out to wide receiver, use his quickness. I've read some questions on the board asking about his speed. He might not have the best speed, but he's very quick, and, you can't teach quickness.
Well, especially you got to be quick off the snap if you're receiving. You got to be able to get the position inside the DB. If you're a guy like him in high school, if he gets positioned inside the DB, he's going to make the catch. He's going to make big things happen. And in my experiences covering kids that play a ton of positions in high school, once they get to college, they tend to be extremely coachable in college. They're the kids who want to win, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to win. Very, very coachable kids, and often whatever position that they start out in college, they end up playing somewhere else, and they're usually pretty good. So I don't know if that's going to happen with Tymir, but I do know that that's the kind of kid a staff loves to bring in, because they don't have to, when they lay their head down at night, they want to worry about as few kids as possible. And from everything that we've learned, he's one of those kids that the staff won't have to worry about when they go to bed at night.
And, Carolina recruited him as a defensive back. So that just shows you. He wants to play anywhere. He was a member of the Jacksonville team that played in a state final a few years ago. So he's a winner. Go along with a Kamarro. They play in a good league and a good area that's been pretty important for North Carolina recruiting efforts.
So what's the latest on Gabe Stephens? You and I haven't talked much about him the last couple of weeks. We probably talked about him less than the other 4 signees who are playing this spring. So catch me and catch us up to date with what's going on with Gabe.
Well, Gabe plays at Mountain Island Charter, and Gabe is a multi-sport star. His football season kind of started a little later because they had a great basketball playoff run. So he didn't even play in their first game of the year. They actually had a football game and a basketball game on the same day. So he played basketball, where he was a vital member of their basketball team. Mountain Island Charter's 1-2. Interestingly, he had a really good game last week, not this past weekend, but the week before. They played Thomas Jefferson Academy this past week, possibly for the conference championship. And Gabe Twitty is a big 2022 target that we'll talk more in depth next week. But he had a really good game against Mountain Island Charter. But Gabe, I've seen him in basketball. He's really building up, and he is going to be so good in Coach Bateman's outside linebacker spot.
The last time we did talk about him was it may have been, a week and a half ago, which I think was the day he played that basketball game instead. And you were kind of raving about him as a basketball player. And, there's another kid who played linebacker at North Carolina here the last 2 years, who was a really good high school basketball player, arrived in Chapel Hill as a quarterback, eventually was an All-America linebacker. But one of the reasons he went to Carolina was because Roy said, hey, you could walk on. Then, of course, Mitch Trubisky decides to go pro, changing the plan. And Larry Fedora said, Chaz, we need you to play spring football. You can't play basketball. So that part of the state, that region of the state, has given Carolina a basketball player turned terrific linebacker before.
Mountain Island Charter is in Mount Holly. And ironically, I know Denver, North Carolina kind of claims Chaz, but they kind of lived in that Mount Holly region too, in Gaston County too, in their earlier days. But yeah, you're right. When you have a extra little recruiting advantage, when you can put Roy Williams, on get him to speak to a kid. We've seen him speak with Keyshawn Silver talking about and ironically, a lot of these kids do play basketball, and so they follow the basketball Tar Heels. Who wouldn't use they hadn't this year or last year going to the Dean Dome for recruiting visits. That was a big, exciting time for some of these football players to witness the atmosphere of a Carolina basketball game.
Well, without going down a rabbit trail on this one, I will throw in this, that I've talked to a lot of Carolina football players in the past who were high school basketball players that used to play pickup a lot with the actual Tar Heel basketball players. A lot of them are friends. They support one another. A lot of them are friends. A lot of them like to play pickup. So it'll be interesting. We talked to Gabe Stephens in a couple of years. We asked about playing any pickup with the Hoops Heels. Bryson Nesbitt is someone that you have chronicled a lot since last summer when you saw him at a 7-on-7 down in Rock Hill, South Carolina, I believe it was, and you really started building a strong relationship with him. And I'll never forget your take on him. After that 7-on-7, you called me on the phone when you were driving home, and I'm going to try it again. I won't do it justice, but I'm going to try it again here, Miss King. That, Andrew, that boy is real good. And you started going on and on and on about all the things you like about his game. Well, he did sign with Carolina, and he is playing a spring season. So how are things going with Bryson Nesbitt?
Andrew, you just really like my twangy voice, you know. I got tickled the other day when Roy Williams was going to, he said Dean Smith had a twang. Roy, meet Deana's twang. You know, when I get to ask him some questions, I bet he gets some
you're just not, your twang, it doesn't have a nasal component to it that Dean has.
But yeah, Bryson Nesbitt, he plays at South Mecklenburg, and they having a little tough time. They've not won this year. They're 0-3, but in Charlotte, you got so much good football teams, and they've just kind of had to. They've not got that first win. Bryson got his first touchdown catch of the year last week, so against Providence. So he's another basketball player. You know, he got nominated for the McDonald's All-American game. How special was that? He's listed on there with Tar Heel basketball commits, Dontrez Style and DeMarco Dunn. So I thought that was pretty cool. So he's another basketball. I mean, Matt could put a group out there and play some of those basketball players in basketball.
Well, but Matt likes that.
Yeah, I know he does.
Kevin Hester was a basketball player, and they watched him, and he didn't have a lot of experience playing football. And they, you know, if you're a lineman and you've got the footwork of a basketball player, that's huge. So Mac liked the multi-sport athletes back in the 90s when he was at Carolina. So he's doing it again. The more guys that play other sports, the better, because
you don't go down that Carolina football roster. At the top, Sam Howell. Sam was an outstanding baseball player.
Yeah, really
people don't know that. You know, Sam was. Jefferson Boaz was the player of the year in the whole state of North Carolina, the athlete of the year, because he was a good pitcher, quarterback, played center on basketball team. So Max loves multi-talented athletes, but Bryson is doing just kind of like I thought he would do. I mean, he's a prototypical tight end. I mean, who would love to have a tight end at that size and that vertical that, you know, when he gets to Chapel Hill, he may be maybe that slash tight end wide receiver type of a kid. So
I think that they would like that in the air raid offense. Trevion Stevenson, Jacob Turner, our very own Jacob Turner. You guys see Jacob and I do a lot of videos together. He was up in Virginia Beach last week and spent a weekend up there and caught up with a lot of kids that Carolina is targeting, and signee Trevion Stevenson, who's playing a spring season up there. He had just suffered an injury and wasn't playing at the time, but he was there, and we ran a story. So go to TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can see Jacob's story on him. And also, if you're on our channel, Tar Heel Illustrated on YouTube, you could scroll down, you could catch the interview with Trevion Stevenson, and catch everybody up to date with some of the stuff that Jacob reported, also some of the things that you've uncovered about how things are going for him right now.
Jacob reported that he had I believe a hand injury. So when we do our little updates on the week, during the week, I couldn't find nothing. So we kind of now know why Trayvon's name hasn't been in papers or stuff. But Trevion, he's been a really pleasure to cover. I mean, he's the type of kid that I think a lot of people might not. They look at his star rankings, and we preach to people, don't look at star ratings. I mean, he's a 2-star. That's what he's ranked by rivals, okay?
But he's going to play football for North Carolina. If he's good enough for Matt Brown,
player.
He ought to be good enough for anybody else, right?
Yeah, you got Matt Brown.
And by the way, and let me jump in. And I'm not saying that to butter up to anybody. I think people that watch this, they know that's not what we do. There are a lot of what was Javonte Williams the day he won the MVP in the state championship his senior year? He was a zero offers. He did that on Keene Stadium turf, and a bunch of Carolina coaches were watching him. They're like, holy crap. Because he was at their camp that summer, and this isn't a Javonte Williams podcast, but I think we talk about Trayvon Williams, Stevenson. It's important to note this. I covered the day camp in June before his senior year that he was at Chapel Hill, back when Larry Fedora was the head coach, and I didn't notice him. He was with the safeties, the defensive backs. He wasn't even with the linebackers. He wasn't with the running backs. I didn't notice him. There were 5 or 6 kids that were at that camp that I wrote about. No clue Javonte Williams was. But look at what he turned into.
Well, and Javonte,
you cannot judge this stuff on star ratings.
Yeah, I saw him first time I ever saw him. He played his Wallace Rose team played my Starmount team in a state final, and he was a linebacker. Javonte got 4 state titles to 4 state championship rings, and I'll never forget his coach getting on local TV and just berating the college coaches in the state for not offering him. I mean, because he said he was everything that a father would want in a son, a valedictorian, a standout, and he would be someone that wouldn't be, that you could take home and show your girl, if he had a girlfriend, take to show his parents and everything. I know this ain't Javonte thing, but you see what we're saying. Kids, you can't measure heart. I think Trevion Stevenson has a big heart, and he wants to be a Tar Heel. He's always wanted to be a Tar Heel. You saw when he committed how he had Carolina stuff everywhere. Carolina's a huge presence up in that Virginia Beach, Hampton area. So he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder because I believe he sees that kind of ranking, and he's not got the lofty ranking some do. So he's going to have a good work ethic and want to prove everybody wrong.
Well, and we could also tell through our conversations with him and Jacob's excellent interview we had with him that he really appreciates what he has with being a part of this Carolina class. And kids that express that a lot, and you see it in their work ethic, often I don't like the term overachieve, because if they can do it, how they overachieving, it just doesn't really make sense. But based on what people how people use the term overachieve, that he's a candidate to do that when he gets to Carolina. There's no doubt about that. We're going to do the 22 commits in our next podcast, and we'll do the 22 and 23 targets in a different podcast. We don't want to do a 45-minute. This isn't David Sisk and AJ. We're not doing a 45-minute podcast here. So that's a healthy snapshot of the 5 2021 signees, Deana, that are playing this spring. I know that you're swamped. This is a different time for you. You haven't had to be on top of all the basketball. I know that you were doing state championships and high school football, plus what you do covering the Tar Heels with us here at THI. So we were talking before we started this how much I can't wait to decompress in the off season, and I know that you're looking forward to it as well, my friend.
Well, I know Andrew likes to plan ahead, but you can't really. I can't plan ahead. You may want me to go watch a football game, but Carolina's plays Friday night. I got to do my THI duties for the NCAA tournament. So yeah, you're right. I mean, this year has been a whirlwind, and with just finishing up state basketball finals and championships and playoffs. Now going into football, and we got NCAA basketball. We're getting ready to start spring football. I know everybody's going to be excited about that coming up. So,
March 23rd, Carolina starts spring practice.
Not a dull moment.
No, March 23rd, Carolina starts spring practice. Pro Day is March 29th, and the spring football game is April 24th. The latest spring football game I can recall ever, not just at Carolina, but any of the schools I've covered around here. I think the latest spring football game before was like the 18th or something like that I've ever covered. So they're pushing it toward May. but that's okay. The good thing about spring football, Carolina, starting likely after the basketball team season is done, is we could just throw all of our horses into spring football, which will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Got a lot of anticipation about the upcoming season for the Tar Heels on the Gridiron.
Absolutely. She's Deana King. I'm Andrew Jones. You've been watching a UNC football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com and our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. If you like this video, go ahead and click like, share it with your friends, let them know that we talk UNC football, basketball, the Heels, and recruiting all the time. New content every day on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And it's not just one thing. It's usually 3 or 4 new things every day of the year. So go check us out. Thanks for stopping by.